Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good evening. I have returned after a little intermission, so I do appreciate everyone's patience. We are going to begin in just a few minutes. What I would like to ask, if everyone please could fill up the front rows first, inshallah. There's no need to be shy. If you all could, you brothers in the back, if you all could please fill up the front rows first. I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, while we're waiting to begin, I want to do a quick sound check. Jad, can you hear me okay? Okay, alhamdulillah. Kicked my water there, excuse me. Okay, and I'm just waiting for the last of folks to file in. We'll be beginning in just a minute now. Thank you all very much for your patience, and I do appreciate you all being here. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good evening. I do appreciate you all for waiting patiently. My name is Ibrahim Safir. Inshallah, I will be your humble host for the evening. Welcome to Al-Hidaya Center, and thank you all for being here. First thing that I would like to do is introduce the Imam of Al-Hidaya Center, Imam Jafar Sabkhawi. If you could please come up, inshallah.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Usually, those of you who are not familiar with some of the introductory prayers that the Muslims introduce a function or an event like this is to supplicate, is to say a few words of prayers to, first of all, to God, to Allah, asking Him to help us, to guide us, to do the right thing and to say the right thing, and also to send prayers and salutations to our beloved messenger Muhammad, peace be upon him and upon all the messengers of God. So, having said that, then what I would like to say, I would like to thank you all for being here, particularly our guests, from the interfaith community, and many of those of you who are coming from other mosques and other religious institutions. Thank you so much. May God bless you for spending some time and being able to be with us in this evening, which we believe is a very, very important evening, and it is the least that we can do to support our brothers and sisters in humanity, and for those who are Muslims, for those brothers and sisters in Islam. Thank you so much. I will give the microphone to Ibrahim and we'll start our program.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Jafar. May Allah reward you. What I would like to do next is introduce another important member of our community. His name is Ridwan Sabkhawi. Inshallah, he is going to do a brief Quran recitation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening to all. Along the same lines of blessing the event with the supplications, we'll read a passage from the Quran in Arabic. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم اذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ جعل فيكم أنبياء وجعلكم ملوكا وآتاكم ما لم يؤت أحدا من العالمين يا قوم ادخلوا الأرض المقدسة التي كتب الله لكم ولا ترتدوا على أدباركم فتنقلبوا خاسرين قالوا يا موسى إن فيها قوما جبارين وإنا لن ندخلها حتى يخرجوا منها فإن يخرجوا منها فإنا داخلون قال رجلان من الذين يخافون أنعم الله عليهم ادخلوا عليهم الباب فإذا دخلتموه فإنكم غالبون وعلى الله فتوكلوا إن كنتم مؤمنين قالوا يا موسى إنا لن ندخلها أبدا ما داموا فيها فاذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا إنا هاهنا قاعدون قال رب إني لا أملك إلا نفسي وأخي فافرق بيننا وبين القوم الفاسقين قال فإنها محرمة عليهم 40 سنة يتيهون في الأرض فلا تأس على القوم الفاسقين صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you. MashaAllah, Ridwan, may Allah reward you. I was reflecting on something that Sheikh Jafar has said when he had introduced himself and when he had welcomed all of you. And that was this notion of us being here is the least that we can do, something along the lines of the least that we can do. And it made me think of this theme or this idea of the least that we can do. And in my mind, that translated to not doing enough. And it made me reflect on how I myself have not been doing enough in regards to Palestine. How we are nearly 2 years into this genocide, and how I have not done my part. And I start to think of what I've done and what I didn't do. Did I speak up enough? Did I speak to my coworkers enough? When someone tried to justify genocide, tried to justify the killing of civilians, did I say anything? Or did I just try to toe the line? Did I try to not rock the boat because I wanted to somehow selfishly make my life a bit more bearable? Did I go and buy something that I know its profit is going to be used to bomb children, to starve innocent civilians? So one of the things that I would like to impart tonight is this idea of not doing enough, and for us to self-reflect and to take accountability for the things that we did, and unfortunately the things that we were too scared to do. And ask ourselves, are we doing enough? I don't believe so. Now, what I would like to do is change gears now. I'm going to present a video to you, just explaining how the rest of the night is going to go. We are going to present a video to you here on the screen. What I would like from you, the audience, is to please pay close attention and have those reflections and ask great questions. As you all please note the QR codes on each of the pillars. I want to hear from you all tonight. I want to hear from you all about questions that you have, about how we can hold ourselves more accountable, about how we can bring an end to this genocide, and how we can do the most that we can, and how we can make the most impact. The people in Palestine, the people in Gaza, they're doing every single thing that they can. And so we have to ask ourselves if we're doing the same. After the video, I'm going to invite some of our esteemed guests, 4 panelists, and I'll be introducing them after that. And I'll be asking them some questions myself, so please do pay close attention, do ask good questions. We want to hear from everyone in the audience about how we can work towards solving this problem and ending this genocide and freeing the people of Palestine, inshallah. Where is tech support? Are we ready? Alhamdulillah.
We're joined now in Raleigh, North Carolina by Anthony Aguilar, a whistleblower who worked as a subcontractor in Gaza as part of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid delivery operation. He resigned from his job with UG Solutions after witnessing Palestinians being fatally shot as they sought food at aid sites. Anthony Aguilar is a retired lieutenant colonel who served for 25 years in the U.S. Army Special Forces as a Green Beret. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us on Democracy Now! Can you start off by talking about your experience in Gaza and telling us exactly what you saw?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to share this story. I do not call this my story. I call this the story of the oppressed, the story of the Palestinians in Gaza who are dying at the hands of starvation and violence. What I witnessed in Gaza, I can only describe as a dystopian, post-apocalyptic wasteland. We, the United States, are complicit. We are involved, hand in hand, in the atrocities and the genocide that is currently undergoing in Gaza. For anyone who says that there is no starvation or mass hunger, or that not only are we at the precipice, but we have stepped over the line of wide-scale famine, to anyone who says that that's not happening, shame on you. Shame on you. It's inhumane. What I witnessed in Gaza at all 4 distribution sites, I didn't just go to one for a photo op. I didn't go to one to watch a distribution and then say, yes, this looks great. I spent days on end in Gaza at all 4 distribution sites. At Karim Shalom, where the aid is loaded for distribution, and at both operation centers that control the daily convoys, logistics, operations, and distribution for the 4 sites. What I saw on the sites, around the sites, This is not hyperbole. This is not platitudes or drama. This is the truth. I break that down by what I would describe as the sites themselves. I spoke to Senator Van Hollen last week, and we had a very frank discussion on the status of the sites and what's at these sites. The sites have not only become death traps, they were designed as death traps. All 4 distribution locations were intentionally, deliberately constructed, planned, and built in the middle of an active combat zone. Some may argue, well, all of Gaza is a war zone. That may be true, but there are parts of Gaza that are direct or that are determined to be active operational combat zones where Israeli Defense Forces are operating. Those sites were built in the middle of those areas, intentionally. It's not by accident. That in and of itself, to designate humanitarian distribution sites to service an unarmed, starving population, to build them deliberately in an active combat zone, is a violation of the Geneva Convention protocols. It's a violation of humanitarian law. And in my opinion, it's a violation of humanity in general. The sites, not only where they were built, all 4 sites around the perimeter and the roads leading in and out are barricaded by razor wire. Not barbed wire, not concertina wire that we use in warfare for obstacle obstruction or for paths. Razor wire. Geneva Conventions specifically prohibit the use of razor wire to restrict areas that civilians are servicing. Hospitals, water points, few distribution points. And we're using it. Not only did the IDF provide it for us to use it on the sites, we, UG Solutions, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, asked for it specifically. Razor wire is designed to maim and kill. And we're using that to channelize and herd, if you will, thousands of unarmed, starving civilians. That's a war crime. The actions on the sites, escalation of force, no standard operating procedures to dictate that, no rules of engagement provided to the armed contractors on the ground. The indiscriminate use of force, lethal and non-lethal, against unarmed civilians. I want to make that clear. We aren't there on the distribution sites defending ourselves against Hamas. We are using indiscriminate force, targeting civilians, escalation of force that goes far beyond the measures of appropriate against an unarmed, starving population. The equipment that we were issued, fully automatic weapons, which in and of itself is not a violation of protocol. However, we were issued M855 green-tipped ammunition. That's important because green-tipped ammunition is a steel-jacketed copper round that's specifically designed to penetrate armor. It's designed to kill. It's designed to shoot through reinforced objects to kill someone on the other side of it. That's what all the UG Solutions contractors are equipped with right now in country. Everyone carries a standard basic load of 210 rounds of M855 armor-piercing military combat ammunition. Why would anyone need that? Even if to defend themselves, defend their lives against an unarmed population. It's inappropriate. That in and of itself, that action there is a war crime. I call the status of us being in the country. Every UG Solutions contract American, U.S. citizens in Israel that are armed with fully automatic weapons in Gaza as we speak, today, right now, and have been since the 26th of May. We are in the country on a B2 entry visa as tourists. We're in the country as tourists. So if a family member wanted to go to Israel to visit Jerusalem, they would enter Israel on a tourist visa. That's the legal status that armed million meals delivered into Gaza. Shame on you. It's a very simple equation. 92 divided by 2.2 million people divided by 3 million, or 3 meals a day. That's what GHF proclaims. We've been distributing aid since the 26th of May. 26th May down the 29th of June. 64 days of continuous distribution. And we've only managed to distribute 92 million meals. When you break that down, again, it's a simple equation. That's 14 days of meals. So out of 64 days, we provided 14 days of meals to the entire population in the enclave of Gaza. That's inhumane. That would be like saying that you only eat every fourth day. You only eat on Thursday and you only eat on Monday. And to say that that's humanitarian? So to anyone that says that that's enough, or not even close to enough, the narrative of GHF needs help to do the rest, you don't need help because you're not anywhere close to where we need to be. The fact is, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not trained, equipped, manned, or staffed to run humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance of this magnitude. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation needs to be defunded, shut down, and the United Nations needs to be allowed back in full scale, supported by the United States, resourced, helped. Instead of giving the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation $60 million, use that $60 million to support the United Nations mechanism to get 400 sites back to operating, to feed 2.1 million people every day. That was the capacity of the United Nations. So what I saw in Gaza, to me, concerns me as an American. What we are doing in Gaza, in being complicit with what the Israeli Defense Forces are doing, is un-American. I didn't come forward to talk because I want to disregard the struggle and the fight. I stand with Israel against Hamas in their atrocities. The world stands with Israel against Hamas in their atrocities. No one would argue that October 7th wasn't atrocious. But if we as a nation, the United States, and Israel, one of our closest allies, if we go down the road of saying we're doing what Hamas did and saying that that's okay, we are losing our humanity. And we cannot go down that road. It's un-American. It's not in line with our values. 2 months ago, I hung up my uniform after 25 years of service to this nation. I didn't hang up my oath. I swore an oath to the Constitution. I didn't swear an oath to the President, to the Congress, to a boss, to a contract, to a paycheck. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. And that Constitution is underlined in American values. Dignity, respect for human life. Right now, America is on a dangerous road. And if we don't stop now, end this, and back the humanitarian aid process that should be going into Gaza, shame on us. Un-American. I'm going to make sure the truth is known.
SubhanAllah, it's a very eye-opening video. It's not only documenting what we all have been telling everyone this whole time, that genocide is still unfolding, but we get to finally see it as through the eyes of someone who is in there every day. However, I do want to say that we do not need the confirmation of one person to explain to us that this is a genocide. We don't need, no offense, one Western or one white person to tell us that, no, what you've been saying this whole time is correct, and everything that's been happening is wrong. We've been saying that what's been happening in Palestine for the last 77 years, and even before so, has been wrong. One of the things that he had mentioned is October 7th, but this is not a vacuum. We never talk about October 6th. We don't talk about the times before that. I don't want to take up too much time speaking because I do want to get to my panelists. I would like to say, sisters, if we could please fill in the front rows, please. Alhamdulillah, mashallah, the brothers, you have all done a fantastic job. We filled in every seat. Thank you all for being here. What I would like to do now, because we're not here to hear from Ibrahim, is I would like to introduce and invite my guests. First, I have Ms. Karen Carmelli from Jewish Voice for Peace. Did I butcher the name? Did I butcher it? Okay, thank you. Next is Reverend Peter Cook. And next is our esteemed deacon. Sir, if you could please join us at the table. And last but not least is Hidaya's own Ahmed Abu Hakma. Please, if you could join us at the table. So, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you all very much for being here, taking time out of your busy schedules, especially on a Friday afternoon. I think that this conversation that we're about to have, this discussion will, inshallah, God willing, be very fruitful and will be very reflective, but also very encouraging for us to do more and to do something that is sufficient to cause a real change, inshallah. And I know that I spoke before, last thing I'll say before I wrap it up, I spoke about us not doing enough, but I don't want us to discount the things that we have done. If someone told me 2 years ago that I would be listening or agreeing with what Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens said, I wouldn't have believed it. You know, we have seen the entire world shift its paradigm with its thought of how they view Palestinians, how they view Muslims as a whole. 3 or 4 years ago, we couldn't speak about, you couldn't mention Palestine, you couldn't mention what was going on in public. And now we've seen that paradigm shift. And we hope that we want to work for it to continue to shift and work towards that goal of freeing Palestine, inshallah. So, without further ado, I would like to ask my first question to our esteemed panelists. So, after watching the video, I'm wondering, what are your immediate thoughts and reflections on the video? There is one mic in the middle, so please, whoever would like to go first.
First, is it on?
Yes.
Bismillah, yeah, it's
Deacon Walter, can you hear? Can you all hear Deacon Walter?
First of all, it's shocking. I think the world still doesn't believe what's going on. I think the depth of it is so horrible that people assume in this day and age those things are not happening in our world. I speak as a Catholic because Catholics also live in Gaza. Certainly we're not suffering as badly as you, or not to the extent that you are, but the Church of the Holy Family was attacked. Bishop, the cardinal from there came and condemned that and all the attacks. You know, when Jewish settlers, this is not just in Gaza, when Jewish settlers attack Palestinian homes, they also attack Catholic homes. They burn Catholic olive trees, you know. So part of it is, in my job, is letting people know that we are suffering too. That when we speak out to support the people of Gaza, we're also supporting fellow Catholics who are there. Now, we believe that all people are created equal in the eyes of God. But from a practical standpoint, if it's some unknown person on the other side of the world who's getting hurt, that's a bad thing. If it's a member of your group that's getting hurt, that focuses your attention on it. And so we need to be aware as Christians and Catholics that our people are suffering too, and use that as a force to drive people to speak out on these issues and speak out about what is going on in Gaza and the West Bank.
Well, listening to that video, I've listened to far more of those videos than I would care to say, and I come. My wife was born in East Jerusalem. Her father resettled Palestinian refugees, and they had to leave after the 1967 war, and they couldn't return back. But the seeds for what you see here, you know, my family was touching many years ago in the 60s. And then moving forward, my son was very good friends with a man in college whose name is Basil Faraj. And his father spent more time in administrative detention than any other Palestinian. And through his eyes, you know, I've learned how horribly Palestinians have been treated by, you know, being incarcerated in administrative detention, and that the conditions of the prison are far worse than they were when he started. And, you know, and it's just disgusting. And I've traveled myself personally to the Holy Land several times, and I just returned from the West Bank last May. And what I saw there was just horrifying. The massive increase in land acquisition and settler development, and thus the devastation of the economy because of restrictions on employment after October 7th. So I guess I raise all those questions to say that what is happening in Gaza and what we witness here is 20 times amplified over what I saw and experienced. And I'm convinced that the Israeli government has no intention to make peace. They were never serious about a ceasefire resolution. And they have a singular goal, which is to wipe out the Palestinians and take over all the land. And that, and they regard Palestinians as, whether you're a baby, as a potential terrorist, or an adult as a terrorist, and that's how they look at you. And terrorists need to get eliminated. And so this is horrible, but it's not shocking. It's the logical extension of the agenda of the Israeli government. And I'm convinced that that's their goal. Yes, from the river to the sea, for the Israelis to fully occupy it and all of Gaza. And they're going to kill and expand until they get what they want.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. Again, assalamu alaikum and shalom aleichem. Very similar, right? And we have a lot of similarities between our traditions, of course. My name is Karen Carmelli. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace in Albany. That's a national organization that has chapters all across this country, and we are the largest growing Jewish organization in the United States, and we are explicitly an anti-Zionist organization, so we do not support the Zionist ideology. And whenever I do an interfaith panel, I think it's very important for us to come together from our various faith traditions, but I also want to stress that in none of our faith traditions is anything that is going on there acceptable. It is against every single one of our faith traditions. And so I also don't like framing this conflict as a religious conflict. This is a political conflict about land, about resources, and about political ideologies. I am not a very observant Jewish person. I don't come from that background. I was raised in occupied Palestine. I have Israeli citizenship. And my history was really informed by my family's Holocaust survival story. Both my grandparents survived the Holocaust, and my grandfather was a great storyteller. He was orphaned by the Holocaust at the age of 13. First, his father was taken away in the middle of the night and disappeared, and we only found out 44 years later that he had been buried in a mass grave. And then later, his mother and his younger sister were also killed. So my motto and my Judaism was never again, right? And we are seeing it again. It's incredibly painful. I wanted to share just a quick story of talking about some of the similarities between our faith traditions. When after my great-grandfather was disappeared, my grandfather, his mother and sister were moved into a concentration camp. This is in Poland. And he tells a story that it was not a very confined concentration camp at first. They were able to kind of move around a little bit freely. And there were Polish railroad workers who were installing the mechanism that would ultimately lead to the mass killing of Jews. But some of the Polish railroad workers took pity on the children who would play and be in their area. So that one of these guys passed a canned food to my grandfather, who was probably 12 years old at the time, and he brought it home, and it was canned pork, and him and his mother and sister were starving, and he recalls my great-grandmother lighting candles and asking God for forgiveness and eating that canned pork because it was the only thing they had. So when I think about food and what it means to us, family, dignity, I think about Palestinian cooking and how beautiful it is and how fresh the ingredients usually are and vibrant and alive and spicy sometimes. I think about what it means to survive on bags of flour, sometimes sifted from sand. I think about the dehumanization of chasing after an airplane that is dropping this pathetic amount of food as political theater at best, and at worst, it will kill you, as it was just dropped on another child just a few days ago and killed a child. The dehumanization of eating animal feed, doing everything you can to survive. It is so incredibly painful to me, and I also hope that we talk at some point about, we've seen a genocide going on for 2 years now, of constant daily bombardments, of children losing limbs, of whole families being eradicated, and there's something about starvation that is particularly painful, and I think the conversation seems to be shifting as a result of some of these images of starvation. So maybe at some point we can talk about why that's changing the conversation right now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name, for those who don't know me, is Ahmed Abu Hakma. I've been in this community since 2012. I'm originally born and raised in the United States, originally from Palestine. My father is from a small village in the West Bank that only 3 people have come to the United States from. And he and his sister are 2 of those 3. And my mother is from Jerusalem. We can see Masjid al-Aqsa, the Aqsa Mosque, from where we live. It's about a 20-minute walk, very close to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, very close to a lot of the holy sites in the area. Had the privilege of visiting and the honor of visiting multiple times in my life, but given where my family, my father's side, lives in the West Bank, it's been very difficult to go back the last 10 years, especially, and all of that, as Peter Cook mentioned, pales in comparison to what's going on in Gaza. The question was about reflections on the video. And so just to get to that, the first thing that comes to mind is all of this. All of this was absolutely intentional. All of this was absolutely intentional and planned by the occupation forces. And that's what I refer to when others will say Israel or the Israeli Defense Force. All of it was absolutely planned for. UNRWA, the United Nations, that was delivering food to the area, had huge capacity, huge capability to distribute, and a proven track record of it. So what do? They criminalize them from day one. Criminalize them from day one to defund them. Why? So that they can control this. From day one, they bomb the farmland. Why? So that the Palestinians can't provide food for themselves. From day -1,000, years before this, they don't have control of their own water. This is what Ibrahim was saying October 6th, October 5th, all the days before.
And all of this was set up, you know, what Karen didn't say, Gaza was set up to be the concentration camp that it is today. It was inching towards this, and the occupation forces are looking for the right opportunity to turn on the kill switch. And they've turned it on multiple times in history. This is just the most barbaric form of it that we've seen. With regards to the aid, something that wasn't said in the video and something you will hear on the mouth of Western puppets and criminals who are holding positions of head of state, Netanyahu coming to mind, is we bring in the aid and it's all taken by Hamas and they sell it for all these high prices and everything. Let me tell you the truth on that. From people I know on the ground. Let me ask you, if their war was against, and I don't consider it a war, I consider it a genocide, and they're the ones controlling the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, and they see the food getting stolen by people that they are at war against, quote unquote, why wouldn't they kill them right then and there? A very simple, logical question. You see them stealing it. You're the ones controlling it, bringing it in there. I'll tell you who's taking the food. Collaborators, 100%, collaborators who are working with the IDF, with the occupation forces, and have the protection of the occupation forces to steal the food and sell it at an astronomical price to poor, starving people so that they can continue to starve because they can't afford the food. And then who do they actually use their ammunitions on? The starving people. Not the collaborators who deserve to be shot at for starving people. That's number two. Number three, in the video it's described as a war zone. I think it's a death camp, not a war zone. This is not a war. Number four, I commend the person doing the interview for his whistleblowing and for his straight shooting at what's going on with the Gaza Humanitarian Fund and how it's a fraud and how it is a weapon of genocide against the Palestinians. What I struggle with is how he concludes and says, I stand with the occupation forces in their war against. It's not a war. It's not a war. I have to ask the question, and we need to be able to look deeply at this, and it's not that deep. We have to realize that over 600 Palestinian villages were systematically destroyed in 1948, deliberately, before any resistance of Palestinians ever came into existence. We have to realize that the people of Gaza, 70% of them are refugees themselves. We have to realize that the people of Gaza, prior to October 7th, don't have food, don't have water, were already struggling. All of their children were missing their growth milestones. And they were the only population of children in the world shrinking. I have to ask the parents in this room, regardless of your background, what on earth would you do if your child was shrinking? What on earth would you do to feed your child? Perhaps you would say, peacefully demonstrate. The Palestinians tried that and got shot in the thousands in their kneecaps. They tried every single thing in the book. And what I need to encourage those who are struggling with this, and I know people are coming to the right side, what I need to encourage people to do is to be horrified by the oppressor far more than what the oppressed does. You have to be horrified and recognize who the real terrorist is here. Words are words, and you can put your own meaning on it. But if you're not horrified by the person who stands in their suit, speaking perfect English, watching another child starve, then there's something wrong with my heart and yours. And so I'll stop with that.
Thank you all very much for those reflections. and for being so direct and to the point. There's been a lot of fence sitting that we've seen in the last 2 years, and what we really want to accomplish and really encourage everyone in the audience and everyone that we interact with in our lives, our daily lives, to be more direct and to call this atrocity, this genocide, for what it is. So thank you. My next question to the panelists: what is this root cause of the genocide in Gaza? And you guys touched on it a little bit, but if we were to just be very upfront and very blunt on what the root cause is. Because again, what the occupation forces have said is that as soon as we get the hostages back, then all of this will end. As soon as you all leave the Gaza Strip and we're able to clear out, then you can come back and all of this will end. So I ask you all, that doesn't seem to be the case, so if you all could please enlighten me and the rest of the audience of what is the cause of this genocide in Palestine.
Well, I'm not an expert on this, but it seems to me we live in a time of the political strongman. We know here in the United States, Donald Trump is sending National Guard into the streets, taking over the Kennedy Center, doing all sorts of things. People are disappearing off the streets, immigrants, even American citizens going into different camps. And he's doing this having lost 2/3 of the vote. He was elected by 1/3 of the American people. Another third voted for someone else. And the last third didn't vote for anybody. And so here is someone with only 33% of the vote doing pretty much whatever he wants. Now, I'm not an expert on politics in Israel, but it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition is built on fringe groups, much as Trump's presidency is built on right-wing fringe groups who don't seem to care about the rule of law, who don't seem to care about justice, and are pretty much interested more in maintaining power regardless of who gets hurt in the process. If I knew how to get out of this, I'd tell you.
Thank you. I wish that I could agree with you that these were fringe groups, but I don't believe that they are. There was a new study that came out by the Israeli Democracy Institute. So this is an Israeli poll. It was released on Tuesday, showing that about 4 out of 5 Jewish Israelis, 79%, are not troubled by the famine in Gaza. The results of the poll were that 23.4% of Jewish Israelis were, quote, not so troubled by Palestinian famine and suffering, and 55.6% are not at all troubled. So for me, it is really terrible, and it's also really not surprising, unfortunately, because Netanyahu has been the prime minister for the majority, more than anyone else in my whole life. The majority of my life, he's been the prime minister. I remember being there as a child when Rabin was assassinated, and one of his supporters was the one who assassinated Rabin, and he got elected, and then again and again and again. So, I think it's wrong both there and here to put all of our stakes or to put all of our blame on Donald Trump or on Benjamin Netanyahu or on Putin. It's not a person, it's an ideology that comes from there. And I'll just say that growing up, we were regularly told about the demographic threat. Palestinian lives, Palestinian children, Palestinian families were seen as a demographic threat to Israel. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Israel wants to maintain its image as a democracy in the world. And it's a Jewish democracy, so it makes it a little bit difficult for them to justify when there would be more non-Jewish people in between the river and the sea than Jewish people. And so there has been a systemic attempt to discourage Palestinians from staying in their homes, from making their lives so miserable that they leave. And these periodic, as Israeli generals have called it, mowing of the lawn in Gaza, Mowing the lawn is what they called it in 2008, 2009, 2014. And this, I remember at both of those instances being so outraged and calling and doing the protests and doing all these things. And in retrospect, a few thousand people were killed during those times, which is horrendous. But in comparison to what we're experiencing now, it was completely unimaginable. But the ideology is that there is no room. The Israeli public likes to say that everyone is sort of welcome there, but the truth is that non-Jewish people have fewer rights than Jewish people in this quote-unquote democracy, and I feel like all of that is crumbling, and it is crumbling right in front of our eyes, and Gaza is making the world see that.
So that's a really big question, and this answer probably won't feel terribly adequate, but I will say that I think we need to go back and look at the Christian Zionists in the late, in the early 20th century, who really cooked up this idea. They really wanted to get rid of Jewish people and get rid of them, get them out of Britain, get them out of Europe. And they conceived of a place where these people could go, and they kind of talked about the Holy Land. Not because they had any particular love for Jewish people, but they wanted to get rid of them. And it was part of a whole eschatological scheme, which was that, you gather all of the Jews in this one place, and at the end of time, when Jesus comes back, that those who converted to becoming Jesus would be saved, and those who remain Jewish would burn in hell. And that basic Zionism is what animates the most powerful, well-financed lobby in the United States, far larger than AIPAC. And they wrap themselves in the love of Israel, but they almost look at this destruction as kind of hastening the end times. And these people have put Donald Trump in the White House. They prop up Netanyahu. They prop up the whole military industrial complex. Mike Huckabee, Pete Hegseth, their whole, advisory committee, they're all filled with Christian Zionists who are some of the most anti-Semitic people that I can imagine. But there's a lot of money and political power that enable this to happen here in the United States, and which props up Netanyahu and others in Israel. So that's one thing I guess I would say. The other is that over the 20th and the 21st century, we, at various times in our history, have a certain affinity with fascism. Certainly we saw that within, Germany. They learned how to do it from the American South. Hitler was fascinated with, the vigilantes, the Ku Klux Klan, as a pretext for eliminating people. And we also had something called the BJP, or Hindutva, in India, which gave rise to the current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, which is highly fascist and really imagines a pure state for Hindus only, and others like Muslims or Christians or whoever would be eliminated. So it's not any accident that Modi is one of the top collaborators with the Israeli government, and they are all wrapped up with the American government, and they all share these authoritarian fascist tendencies. And they exploit people who feel desperate or lost. They know how to manipulate people to further these ends. So I also think that at the end of the day, this is about land and territory and power, and religion is just it's like a thin veneer of religiosity that kind of papers over these incredibly non-religious ends. But they weaponize religion in a way to make it sound like it's faithful practice when it couldn't be farther from the case.
So one thing I like to see is the dynamic that happens while we're sitting up here, and when there are disagreements, they're healthy disagreements because there's people trying to share with the best that we know, and we should be able to challenge each other and our viewpoints accordingly, and push back where we feel the need to. I've been going to rallies for Palestine my entire life, and I just remember maybe the first rally, maybe I was 6, 7 years old, that I remember going to DC, and one of the chants that stood out with me back then was Jews yes, Zionism no. And I didn't know what I was saying as a 7-year-old, but it stuck with me obviously my entire life. When we lead our prayers on Friday, when we give a speech, one of the things we say is we seek refuge in the evil that you might experience through humanity, and the evil that you might experience through the devils, basically, or the devils that could take human form as well as spirit form. Christian and Jewish Zionism are these two right there, in a sense, with regards to what it's like for Palestinians. Because I have to ask you, if Netanyahu is not there, find me, honestly, find me a prime minister of occupied Palestine that has not promised and brought death and destruction to Palestinians. Find me one. Seriously, find me one. It might have accelerated and decelerated at different rates throughout history, but find me one. You want to say Rabin, maybe? Rabin broke the bones of Palestinian children to the Nobel Prize. Did he not? Was it not his policy in the Intifada? Break the bones of Palestinian children and then you get a Nobel Prize? The only reason he inclined towards peace, was because they had looked so horrible in the first Intifada, killing children holding rocks while they had tanks. In order to restore and start to build their image up, they were dragged to the negotiation table to feign and fake as though they wanted peace. And I need to ask you, did settlements continue during the Oslo period? Were any refugees allowed to come back to Palestine? Were any of the 600 plus villages allowed to be reconstructed? Were the Palestinians given access to their own water? Did movement of Palestinians become more or less difficult after Oslo? You see, the whole part was to make Palestinians collaborators and a subset of Palestinians collaborators in that process, as though there is peace that the occupier is working for while continuing to seal their fate, or trying to seal their fate. And I know there might be people who find these things difficult to hear because we've heard the other narrative in the media. That every single time we've tried to offer peace to the Palestinians, all they've done is X, Y, and Z. And I just want to encourage you to look at what their own historians have said, to look at what Ilan Pape has said, to look at what Avi Schleim has said, to look at what the son of foremost military generals have said, Miko Peled. That's if you don't think we're capable of telling our own history, but we should have permission to narrate and tell our own history because we've known this all along. And so there's never been a problem with Jews coming to Palestine. The point is, with Zionism, it came with an exclusivity. It came with a we will be the dominating force. It came with we will supplant the Palestinians that are already there. And if you take Netanyahu away and you take all of these prime ministers away, I have to ask, I need to ask, and we need to ask ourselves, in synagogues in the United States, what are you teaching your children about that land? You are teaching from the river to the sea, it's only one land, and you gladly send them on this birthright trip that says it's only for one people, and you criminalize the folks that have been there for thousands of years. And then I have to ask you, what's the educational system like in occupied Palestine? You teach them from a young age that we are these animals, not the people that have been harvesting and planting and cultivating these olive trees for thousands of years. So I'm sorry, it is not an elected official, it is the entire system, and the system of Zionism needs to go away, and Jews need to be rescued from it. And Judaism needs to be liberated from Zionism so that it can be more in alignment with the teachings of Moses and Jesus and Muhammad, peace be upon all of them.
All right, thank you all again very much for opening our eyes. That answers my next question. Is there a place for Zionism in the world? And I think that you've done a fantastic job at answering that. What I would like to do now is I would like to open up the floor to the audience. I did say before that I wanted you all to take great notes and to ask great questions. So I would like to take the time now to open the floor. Now we do have the QR codes on the pillars. What I will encourage you all to do very strongly is to raise your voice and to speak and to ask the questions so that you all get comfortable with asking these questions. So when we get out of this bubble, when we get out of this Hidaya, that you all in the real world can ask these questions, that you can speak the real truth to the oppression. So if you all please, if someone would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will distribute the microphone. Sister Neda, if you wouldn't mind. Okay. Oh yeah, I was gonna pass mine. Okay, now one thing I will say to keep in mind that many of you have, I'm sure, wonderful questions. We want to make sure that we keep them nice and concise so that our panelists have enough time to answer them and to answer the other questions, okay? It should be on.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My question really is very much more geopolitical because obviously everything that we see is just so dehumanizing and just so wrong on so many levels from a moral and ethical standpoint. But from a political standpoint, a geopolitical standpoint, everything that we have been hearing for the past week is the greater Israel and expanding the greater Israel, going all the way from Sinai to Iraq and maybe even further. How and what do we do to change the narrative of that?
When I was in Tel Aviv in May, we had the opportunity to meet with an editor from Haaretz, Gideon Levy, who is Jewish, and every day when he goes to the office, he has somebody in the park screaming at him about how he's enabling the destruction of the Jewish people. And I asked him what it was that he thought would change the situation. And he didn't think anything of the peace movement in Israel. Thought it was, once the hostages were released, they were just going to revert. They were just going to kind of continue on, or once they got rid of Netanyahu, they would continue on. And the people live there just completely oblivious. Like, let's have a latte and go to the beach, and have these really racist things that they say. So I said, what are they going to pay attention to? He said, the only thing that is going to stop this is for the United States of America to stop sending weapons. And he said, and they will not pay attention to anything else except the cessation of military aid. And so, as long as the United States of America enables this expansion, they're going to expand.
This greater Israel concept is not a new concept. Zionist founding fathers, in all of their memoirs, in all of their autobiographies, said the very least is all of historic Palestine. And greater Israel is exactly Sinai, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and parts of Iraq. So this is not a new concept. It's something that has been on their eyes and on their mind. And you have to ask yourselves, why are they given a free rein to bomb Syria as they wish? You know, it is a classical colonial tactic to make sure that the prized possession is strong and all of the surrounding areas are weak. And every single war in that area, and with the elected officials from occupied Palestine coming here beating the drums of war, and us being fools and falling for that, has all been part of making sure there's nothing but death and destruction in the surrounding area. So when the time is right, expand. Continue to expand. And that's all I will say about that, because obviously suffocating the military aid is what should be done.
Yes, from the brother side. Oh, right there. He's coming around too. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. So I'd like to first thank the panelists for what you have said, and there's a lot of historical truth to it that many of the lay people in America, New York State, upper New York State is not aware. At the same time, you know, there has been a change, right? People supporting, but still, we have a long way to go. 2001 in Second Intifada, I was probably the only Palestinian supporter plastering up the walls and the doorways in my college time. They would get taken down the next day. Go do it again in secret, right? Because there was no support. Now, you know, at least today I see there's a whole room of people here coming in, listening to the panelists. But at the same time, do you know what is being taught in high school about World War II, right, in America? It's more about the...
Brother, your question? I'm sorry, I don't mean to rush you.
So the question is, you know, what can actually be done, right? Like, you know, why aren't we, right, like, you know, promoting the cause to no to hate, right? Like, if we actually know how has the Zionists gone to power, right? Why can't we, as people against hate, right? That's what it's about, you know, be it against Zionism, whatever, it's being hate. Why, how can we mobilize to prevent hate? You know, is it being
how can we mobilize
coming into election, running for election, or promoting
Is that your question, brother? How can we mobilize to prevent hate?
Yes.
Okay. Which one?
Thank you for the question. I think we need to be very specific about what our goals are. And so, as part of JVP, we are constantly mobilizing on lots of different issues. But Palestine right now is the issue that we are concentrating on. The answer is complicated. It is everything. It is everything all at once. It is all of the angles. It is the political angle. It is talking to our representatives. It is being public. It is being out in the streets. It's causing a nuisance. It's being loud. In New York City this Saturday, tomorrow, there's going to be a mass protest. There were several mass protests in DC. It's all of these things all at once. And it's also the cultural aspect that I think is really important. So, it's music artists talking about Palestine and getting in front of the stage. It's whatever platform you have, whether it's a union, it's bringing up Palestine in your union meetings and saying, where are our union dues going? How do we divest from occupation? How do we divest from death? It is coming from everywhere, and none of us know how these things happen. And I think what's really important for us to think about is we are really living in history right now. We are living in a moment that is going to be looked back on. And in the same way that apartheid ended in South Africa, it was all of the tactics. It was the pop stars. It was the economic boycotts. It was everything. And at some point, it flips. Right now, I really do feel that we are in that moment of transition. And I had this thought the other day as a person who's gone through birth and labor, and I'll speak to this side of the room. But if you know, transition is that last moment of early labor, and it's right before the end stage, right? And it is the most painful. And it's when you say, I can't do it anymore. Like you look your partner in the eyes and you just say, nope, not me, this is done, can't do this one more second. We are in that moment where all of a sudden we are seeing people who haven't spoken up are speaking up. People who haven't shown up are speaking out, and it's incredibly painful because you are grateful for their presence and you are also going, where have you been? But we have to accept the people who are coming to this movement when they are coming. We have to galvanize, and it is an attack on all fronts to end this. And it's so important that we really do everything. So it's not a very good answer that I have, but it's realizing what privileges and what powers each of us has. For me, it's being a white woman, it's being a Jewish woman, it's having that Israeli passport that I get to be invited and speak. And it is wrong, and as Ahmad was saying, Palestinians are certainly capable of telling their own stories, and they have. But whatever privilege I have to utilize and leverage that privilege as well.
I thank you. Yes, amen to all of what was just said there. You just have to be loud and speak out every day, I think. But I think it's also moving beyond labels. Even Zionism has a lot of nuance to it in terms of range, and you have to look under this to what are the shared values of our different faiths, and to really build on that and look for that as you organize. And to not confuse Zionism or Christian nationalism or Hindu nationalism or any of those things with our faith.
Oh, I was just going to say, we also have to resist the temptation in our own groups to hate the other. I know when I was coming here, I was talking to a Catholic from Pakistan who told me I should not come because someone she knew in Pakistan was killed by a group of Muslims, and we should kill all the Muslims. We should not be coming and talking to them. And I told her she was wrong. We need to speak to each other. There are going to be people on the edges of every group. who are going to be doing terrible things. I think it was Theodore Roosevelt one time said something to the effect, he never belonged to a group that had members he'd be embarrassed to be seen in public with. So I think we can all be proud of our groups, but we can be aware of there are people within those groups that maybe are more interested in creating problems than finding solutions. And so support those who are supporting us and resist those who are more interested in causing other trouble.
Thank you. Just one last comment, two things. One with regard to the question, and two, it seems like there's like a flyer with statistics and tips of what can be done to help Gaza and Palestine being distributed in the mosque. All the information on it looks great. It's just not something that was run by the mosque. If you want to give out or disseminate any information, it needs to be run by the mosque board first. So while the information is great, you know, the board president is here. If you wanted to pass anything by him, that would be the appropriate channels to go through. I just want to, obviously there's much more we can do, but there are some positives that are happening. I think you mentioned how things are, what is being taught in schools. This year, the National Education Association, the NEA, voted to stop endorsing the propaganda that the ADL is pushing into schools because of their stance on what's going on in Gaza and Palestine. All right, people have become so disgusted. If you are, it goes back to what Karen was saying, use your spheres of influence to change the narrative. I've said this before and I'll say it again, there are educators in the audience who have a unit that teaches about Palestine. And they invited Karen before to speak from her lived experience. They've invited me before to speak about my lived experience. And they invite settlers in illegal settlements to speak about their experience. And the students see the truth and they see what is disgusting and reprehensible and they make the logical conclusion as a result. So if we just make the real information accessible, then that's important, okay?
Thank you. It was mentioned, I think it was Peter Cook who mentioned that the peace movement in Israel is weak, or you heard that from somebody. But I wonder if anybody up there has knowledge of the groups of people that are working in Israel, Palestinian, and Jewish Israelis and others together, such as Standing Together, such as Family Forum, etc. I looked for Facebook posts from people who are in Israel doing this sort of work, and I try to share that with my friends to show them this is going on. So I just wondered if, and I understand your point, and I really agree that the US government is where it's at, and that's going to stop this, this genocide and create a different future if we can manage to do that. But I'm wondering, in terms of Israelis changing the narrative there on the ground so that they can influence their government, I just wondered if somebody would speak to that. Thanks.
Could I try, since I put that piece of meat on the table? So that was the opinion of the editor of Haaretz in terms of his assessment of the peace movement in Israel and his sense that the preoccupation was really with bringing the hostages home and getting rid of Netanyahu, but that there was not a lot of interest in really dealing with the plight of Palestinians in the long term. That was his view and his opinion. I think there are counter movements that do definitely exist within Israel, groups of people who are organizing, and they do exist. We had a tour from some Israelis and Palestinians come a few weeks ago, who's young people who really spoke powerfully about their their angst and what they saw. So it exists, but the overwhelming force and power to help those groups get footing is, I mean, it's quite overwhelming. So, yeah. I don't know. Maybe you know more. Do you know more about organizing Israelis on the ground?
Yes, thank you. There are those groups, but they are really have been diminished, I think, and they are up against a lot. It's very personally difficult to speak out. If we find it difficult to speak out in this country, then speaking out in that environment is horrific. My mother decided we were living occupied Palestine when I turned 16 because she said, you're not going to the military and you're not sitting in jail, which is what the options are. If you refuse to serve in the occupation forces, you will go to jail. And there are some young people who are doing that. But again, it's the question of, and I think that the left in this country has looked to the Israeli left a lot as a sort of like inspiration in some ways. But we can also look at the Palestinian, and the Palestinian people who are trying to claim their independence, trying to claim their rights, instead of the people who are saying we should be allowing them to have rights, if that makes sense to you. Not really. But I think, looking to the people who are in the position of power as the ones who are going to sort of direct which way the peace movement goes, instead of the people who are occupied and oppressed and asking, what can we do for you and how can we be in working with you, I think is something we need to change. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Something that's very fascinating happens at the end of Miko Pellet's book, The General's Son, where both he and his brother-in-law both are in groups like this, or were in groups like this, and they have vastly different conclusions as to what should the path forward be. Miko espouses the opinion, and they both attend forums of Palestinians and Israelis who had lost family members and so forth. Miko espouses the opinion that there should be one state with rights for all. And his brother-in-law, Rami, espouses the opinion of no way, how can you do this? There would be so much fighting between us, we have to go for two states. And the real difference between the two is that Miko interacts not just with Palestinians on a neutral ground, where they're coming to a nice hall and eating food from a nice table. No, he goes into their village and he sees how they're living and he lives amongst them. And he sheds so much of the baggage that's been programmed into him. And so I think these groups exist. I personally don't know so much about them, and Paula, obviously you've shared some information with me before. And I just wonder, what is the depth of their understanding and how far have they reached into Palestinian society? How much have they actually seen? How much have they tasted? Because if you can't taste and put a voice to what the Palestinian is going through, I think it's like people who want to work for civil rights a lot of times, and they're not able to really understand what the Black American is going through. They're not really able to understand what that minority is, what that Hispanic American is going through, whose family member may or may not be deported, because they can just go back to a comfortable middle-class life at the end of the day. And the other person may or may not have a meal to put on the table. So I think those groups are good, and I think they need to reach into Palestinian society more, just to realize that, wait a minute, this cannot go on where we have 98% of the water. This cannot go on. These settlements are absolutely ridiculous, and they need to be pulled apart, and resources need to be redistributed. One of the interesting things is, of all the land that the occupation forces have stolen from Palestine, 88% of it is not inhabited.
Salman Abu Sitta, the eminent Palestinian scholar, has done aerial map studies to show that a lot of the farmland is just still there. It's either in ruins or is kept for strategic purposes, and it's not inhabited because most of the inhabitants are in the cities. So many Palestinians could actually go back to their villages if they were allowed to. It's not occupied land. But yeah, those are just some quick reflections.
So we have about 5 minutes left before we have to take a break for prayer. I would like to, Dr. Bhatti, you have a question?
My question is regarding all these elected officials in the Senate, in the House, and even in these towns and cities that are supporting the occupation. And now as the truth is coming out to a greater extent than it ever, I think people need to go after these people and make sure that they are more. People need to come out and tell these elected officials running for elections that they need to be taking care of the people in the USA and not be worried about supporting these people who are just running on the fact that they are supporters of Palestine. And they are in fact not being loyal to this country. And a lot of people have coming out and said this, and this is the right time to take that approach into come next elections, inshallah.
So just a quick comment. Many of you, alhamdulillah, have asked questions through the Padlet, and a lot of them have been answered through the answers. So that's why we're giving priority to the live questions, and we are ending very soon. We'll have Brother Ahmed ask this question, and then.
I have two questions. How to make our community leaders and members really feel the responsibility and ownership of the task at hand, so they really do their best to make a difference, not just be like guest audience with respect to both the audience and speakers. Question number two is, which is very important as well, how to get our communities involved to the threshold that makes an impact on the politicians or the decision makers. Thank you.
Which one?
I have to only pick one? I would go with the second one.
Okay, repeat it for us again.
How to get our communities involved to the threshold that makes an impact on the politicians or the decision makers.
Thank you for your questions. I think if the primary election in New York City has taught us anything, and the victory for Zohran Mamdani, is that Palestine is something that people actually really do care about, and you can win an election now by saying that you support Palestine. So this is part of that transition that I was talking about before, where it's out in the open. We've sort of come out and we can say that we support Palestine, and you can still win an election. And I want people to know, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is a proposal right now called Block the Bombs that would prevent some of the worst weaponry being sent from the US to the state of Israel. And our Congressman, Paul Tonko, just signed on to that just a few days ago. He's one of only like 31 members of Congress to do that. And so I hope everybody here has called his office many times over the last 2 years. I know I have, and they I think see my phone number when it pops up in their, they want to run out of the room. But usually I'm calling to complain. We also need to call and thank them when they do the right thing, because this is the language that politicians speak, right? It's a numbers game. So that we need to be louder than the people who are upset that he is saying we shouldn't be sending 2,000-pound bombs to the state of Israel as it commits a genocide. So that's one thing. Also that it's now becoming popular. But please, there are local organizations in this area. I'm part of a group called the Palestinian Rights Committee that has been active in this region since 1982. So long before 2023, we have organized speaking engagement, film screenings, protests, of course, campaigns to contact our political officials. And I will tell you, we are a small, exhausted group of people. So small and so tired. But there's a new project that Ahmed has put together, the Palestine Narrative Project. There's Jewish Voice for Peace. Like, there are organizations to join, and those organizations desperately need people to join and show up and figure out what it is that I can do. You know, not all of it is being at the rally. Sometimes it's if you have graphic design skills. Sometimes if you're really good with spreadsheets or going through and cataloging what are the products in my grocery stores that are coming from Israel or that are supporting the occupation. There are so many opportunities for people, and we really do need everybody. And now I'm blanking out on what everything else I wanted to say, but just to maintain the steady pressure. You know, I think, I don't know what the numbers are in this region, but just from me living in the Capital District for the past 10 years, the Arab and Muslim population in this area is a significant block of people, right? And so if everybody here has an opinion about something, about Palestine, it feels like a really strong body that could move our politicians, and just making yourselves known to them, and knowing that they need to answer to you. You are their constituents, and they work for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Something I do know something about is local politics. I did spend 3 years in the legislature working for assembly people. A lot of people will say we should contact our local representative. Most people do not. You know, if I'm going to bet 3 people from this group will contact a representative after this meeting, and that's probably an overestimation of 2. So, you know, please call Paul Tonko's office, thank him. There's one thing I do know is people will come and say, we need you to do this, we need you to do this, we need you to do this. Then you do it, and you never hear from them again. So it's like, why would I do anything for them again? You know, they love publicity, they love thank yous. Invite them into your homes. When elections are coming, these people are looking for places to speak. Get your neighborhood group together. Invite them over for coffee in the morning or something in the afternoon. Invite your neighbors to meet with them. Let them know you're here, that you're concerned, and that you're going to vote. And if they want your vote, they're going to have to earn it.
So there was a question over here about allocation of resources overseas as opposed to investing in the United States. I've actually heard that argument more. I mean, it does occur to some people here that while we're struggling with Medicare and Medicaid and food stamps and poverty, you know, what are we doing sending all this military equipment and stuff to Israel and propping them up more than our own people?
Appreciate it. So I appreciate everyone for being here. Folks, we are going to take a break and pray. For any audience that is interested in coming back after, I hope you all will. And for any panelists that is able to stay after prayer, we're going to take about a 10-15 minute break to pray Salat al-Maghrib, and then we will be back for anyone that would like to join, please, so we can get your questions answered. Thank you. Ahmed will still be here, so please, I hope that you all will be here too after. Let's break for Salah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
استووا اعتدلوا يرحمكم الله الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين الذين كفروا وصدوا عن سبيل الله أضل أعمالهم
والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وآمنوا بما نزل على محمد وهو الحق من ربهم كفر عنهم سيئاتهم وأصلح بالهم ذلك بأن الذين كفروا اتبعوا الباطل وأن الذين آمنوا اتبعوا الحق من ربهم كذلك يضرب الله للناس أمثالهم فإذا لقيتم الذين كفروا فضرب الرقاب حتى إذا أثخنتموهم فشدوا الوثاق فإما منا بعد وإما فداء حتى تضع الحرب أوزارها ذلك ولو يشاء الله لانتصر منهم ولكن ليبلو بعضكم ببعض والذين قتلوا في سبيل الله فلن يضل أعمالهم سيهديهم ويصلح بالهم ويدخلهم الجنة عرفها لهم الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين سيهديهم ويصلح بالهم ويدخلهم الجنة عرفها لهم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن تنصروا الله ينصركم ويثبت أقدامكم والذين كفروا فتعسا لهم وأضل أعمالهم ذلك بأنهم كرهوا ما أنزل الله فأحبط أعمالهم أفلم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم دمر الله عليهم وللكافرين أمثالها ذلك بأن الله مولى الذين آمنوا وأن الكافرين لا مولى لهم الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We'll return there in 5 minutes. Just give some people some time to pray sunnah, inshallah, and then we will resume the question and answer session.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. If we could all please return to our seats if we are staying, so that we can continue our program, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. If we could all head back to our seats so that we can continue our program. I know you all have wonderful questions to ask, and we want to be able to get to those, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. If you are staying, please do have a seat. If you are heading out, I understand. If we could take it outside, please, if we are not staying. May Allah reward you all. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Assalamu alaikum. No smile today from you. You gotta give us a smile, please. Can I say it again? What's that? I want to, yeah, I think we can, yeah. That's fine. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. If we could have a seat, please, so we can continue our program. Sisters, please, if you'd be so kind, if we could have a seat, please, so we can continue our program. If you'd like. Oh yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that's true. May I take a picture?
We're taking a question. We're taking a question from the outside. I don't have the answer.
Okay, so let's kind of pick up where we left off. Are there further questions that we would like to ask our panelists? Okay, we're going to start on the sister side, and then we're going to come back to the brother side. Thank you all for your understanding.
Assalamu alaikum. I know we did touch on calling our representatives, so I just wanted to go a little bit further into that. I know that, at least for those of us who want to reach out and call a representative, and by that, inshallah, I mean everyone here, how could you guys walk us through the process of calling a representative and how that works?
Not the expert at all, but please, it is stressful, but it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become doing it, and after that, it's not a big deal. Their job is to represent their constituents. That's it. That is their job. So please feel confident that as a constituent, your voice is what matters. They are supposed to act based off of your opinions. That's how this democracy is supposed to be set up, right? So please always carry that confidence with you. What we do in like the Palestinian Rights Committee and in Jewish Voice for Peace is we will often, like right now, we just had this campaign to encourage Tonko to block the bombs. If you follow us on Instagram, which is PRC Albany or JVP Albany, if there's a particular campaign, we will make a design, a graphic, that will usually have the call to action, the phone numbers, and a script. So you don't have to know everything. Even if you just call and say Free Palestine, that's good. But if you want more details and a script that you can easily follow, get in touch with these organizations who are putting together these pressure campaigns, because we try to make it as easy as possible. So that would be a great resource. But know that you are important. You are the reason that they have the job that they have.
And so they are supposed to listen to you. And usually the people are answering the phones in DC or in their Albany offices are young people, and they don't argue with you. They just listen, and they take your information, and they're supposed to forward it on. So once you start doing it, it becomes easier and easier.
I'll just say one thing I learned in Kansas City. I was at my General Synod for the United Church of Christ, and we passed a resolution unanimously against violence against religious minorities in India. But we also passed a very powerful resolution on Gaza and the whole Middle East situation. But the advice that I heard from our lobbyists in Washington was that in Washington they have a system where if you send them an email and says, yes, I support this, or no, I support this, they put some of those emails in one folder and the other emails in the other folder, and they see literally how high the stack is. And so, that repetition and keeping at it and building the stack of letters makes a difference.
Be respectful when you call. Don't call up and say, you miserable bum, I hate you, and you haven't done anything yet. Just say, my name is, and I'm your constituent. I live at such and such a place. And usually there are two approaches. One, if there's a specific issue, as you had spoken about, I'm calling about this issue. I hope you will support it. If you're concerned about a ceasefire, you don't have to have a plan for the ceasefire. You just need to ask your elected representative, what are you going to do to bring about a ceasefire? You don't have to carry the weight of every issue that comes up. Put it on their shoulders. That's what they're getting paid for. What are you going to do? And feel free to say, I'll call back next week.
Just anecdotally, like I've reached out, I've met with Paul Tonko multiple times, and I've called his office multiple times, and if he doesn't answer, he's called me back whenever I answered. And he is doing his job in that capacity to at least give an audience. Sometimes he's fallen short, and sometimes he's been bang on. And just to echo what Karen said, we should call and thank for when he's on the money there. Another thing that I've done this past fall, last October, and annually in October, there's like a Palestine Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill, organized through an offshoot of American Muslims for Palestine. It's American Justice for Palestine. I'm speaking as an individual here, not representing the masjid or anything, but I've been there, and one of the feedbacks that we got, obviously there's elected officials who hate to see us there, but there's those who are amenable to what we're there to deliver in terms of a message. They said, hey, we love what you're doing here, but I just want you to know the Zionist lobby is here every single day, and you're here for 2 days, type of thing. So there's a whole lot more work for us to do on that avenue as well.
If I could just add one thing, because this is the sin I'm paying for the rest of my life. When I worked in an office and somebody wrote and you didn't want to respond or give an answer or alienate them, you would just write back to them, say, thank you very much for contacting our office. We appreciate the input of all our constituents, and we'll certainly take it into consideration. That is not an answer. When you get that response, you write back, say, thank you very much for your letter, but what are you going to do?
Question from the brothers?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Congratulate Al-Hidaya for such an important program. So inshallah, every time we have a program, we should, such dedicated presence here, we should give them something in writing, some action items, so that when they go home, they act on it and they can distribute it and spread the word. Having like 30, 40 years of experience, changed American foreign policy on Bosnia, Then Burma through Bosnia Task Force and Burma Task Force got Narendra Modi's visa revoked. And thank you so much for your support for, against the fascist government of India. There are certain things that we should realize. I mean, the politicians, most of them are not principled people. They are there to win elections. They have their careers in politics. And they know that we are less than 2% and we don't spend money. So our masajid and our organization should do what Hidaya is doing, get our neighbors and our other friends involved and make a coalition. Only then, 2% will never be empowered by themselves. But Jewish Voice for Peace, there were so many Christian churches, the youth have, were suspended from the universities, they lost their their jobs, so they are good people. Mamdani, in the most Zionist town in America, is now leading by 20 points. So there are lots and lots of good Americans. So we have to reach out to them and form a delegation, multi-faith delegation, and also those who do not have any faith, and then meet with the media and and then politicians. Because if you meet with the local media and put pressure on them, your work will get magnified by many times when you meet with the politicians. So do these things. And also, we don't ask Rohingyas, why don't you fight? Whatever a victim community is doing morally, fight, resisting or not resisting is there. Our job and duty is to support them. And we should not sit here in the comfort of our homes and say, eradicate Israel or Zionism is completely, whatever they are wanting, if they want piece by piece, step by step, first stop the genocide, get the food in, and later step by step we support them. So we should not just take all or none thing. We never tell Rohingyas, why don't you resist? They just want relief, we give them relief and we try to stop the genocide. Palestinians are resisting bravely for many, many, many decades. We will tell our neighbors that just like the Native Americans resisted the white European settlers, and we teach our children in our schools that was their right and the natural thing, Palestinians are doing the same thing. But the demands, let the Palestinians make their demands. Whatever demands they make, we will support that, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Do we have another question from the sisters? Did any of my panelists want to comment?
I know that was a great comment, and Dr. Obaid, just Jazakallah khair for your comment. It makes me think of a question that I want to ask. And, thank you for the panelists for coming here. I just want to know, have your communities been able to have similar discussions like this? And if not, can we have this or something similar to this where we could speak to your community? I would love to speak to the Catholic community, the Protestant community, the broader Christian community, anyone from the Jewish community that would like to listen to what we have to say. I would also like to be able to speak to them. So I'm just wondering, have these discussions happen? Can it be facilitated with the influence that you have? And what are your thoughts on that?
Can I go ahead? Okay. In the Catholic tradition, we have something called Catholic social teaching. And this is our approach to the world, our belief that we are all equal in the sight of God, that we should live in solidarity, that we should help each other, that we should live by a principle of subsidiarity, which means things should be done at the lowest level rather than the highest level. And I became involved with Catholic social teaching back in the 1980s when I joined the Commission on Peace and Justice for the Catholic Diocese. And at that time it was called the best kept secret in the Catholic Church because so many people didn't know about it. And now 30 years later, it is still the best kept secret in the Catholic Church. It's teachings from the popes, from the bishops. It rarely filters down into the pews. Because I was with the Peace and Justice Commission and I'm a deacon, I get to preach every couple of Sundays. And I would preach on the church's position on a two-state solution, the church's position on gun control, the church's position on something else. And inevitably, after Mass, someone would come up, poke me in the chest, and yell at me and say, that's not the reason I come to church. Now, there are some parishes like St. Vincent's that are very active and would love to have you come in. My parish is closing on Sunday, so a little late. But there's a Commission on Peace and Justice. I retired last year, but I'd be happy to put you in touch with the new director, and they could arrange programs, set up things where people could come discuss the issue. I think it's a great idea.
So the New York State Council of Churches has started something called the Religious Nationalisms Project. And the Religious Nationalisms Project holds seminars around the country where we bring Muslims and Jewish folks and Christians together, and those who have no faith, to really have conversation about these issues. And I'm headed to Chicago tomorrow, actually, to do four or five seminars in Chicago area around Zionism and also Hindu nationalism and Christian nationalism. And we're doing, and my particular tour is being underwritten by the Indian American Muslim Council. So we're really eager to try to build a bridge between Christians and Muslims to talk about these really hard kinds of issues. The problem that we've had in the past is that we've had these interfaith dialogues, right? But there's so many things that are off the table to talk about. You know, we can get together and we can share coffee and, you know, share a few things, but we really can't talk about the elephant in the room. And so what we want to do is talk about the elephant in the room, and to do that in an interfaith kind of setting. We do a summit every year in Washington, D.C., where we bring in Muslims and progressive Hindus and Christians and Jewish folks and Buddhists to really sit down and have a conversation. You can see some of these on our website at nyscoc.org, that, you know, these conversations. So anyway, I would take that as an offer to see if we can co-plan some things. My colleague Stacy Farber, who is here, she's not here anymore, but she's president of J Street. We're now working on some of these shared programs where we're going to try to, you know, do what you've just described.
I wish I had somewhere to invite you to, but we do not have any synagogues or congregations that are particularly happy with our viewpoint. And that is just mostly because the Jewish religious institutions in this country have been so intertwined with Zionism, and we know that most synagogues in this country fly an Israeli flag outside. And for me, I wouldn't go there. I couldn't do that. So, you know, we're working on that. What we do, JVP Albany has started these quarterly Shabbat dinners. So this would be on a Friday evening. We do this big potluck, and we try to talk a little bit about our faith and try to. Many of us in Jewish Voice for Peace have, and I'm speaking for myself personally, but I have actually really distanced myself from my faith because of the strong tie to Zionism. So I don't feel welcome in a lot of Jewish spaces. I don't feel comfortable. I've gone to a friend's bar mitzvah for their son, and the rabbi did a prayer for Israel during the bar mitzvah. That is not a space that I feel like I can be in. So we hold these Shabbat dinners on a quarterly basis in the church basement because we don't have the space, but we are so welcoming and we would love for all of you to come to that kind of a space. And as far as the interfaith conversation, I was speaking to a member of the audience before during the prayer time, and she was expressing some of her frustration with being part of an interfaith group and how they have been reluctant to release a statement about the genocide. And I said to her, you know, the fact that we can all sit together and drink coffee and hang out, that's
we've done that. We've figured that out. Muslims and Jews were doing that in Palestine in 1827 and before. I mean, you know, it's not a new thing. So the interfaith organizations that really stress like recognizing each other's common humanity, that's fine. But we do that. I recognize that you're a human, you recognize that I'm a human, great. What are we doing about it? What are we doing to change the power imbalances between myself and you? How am I going to help you get the same power and privilege that I have? So for me, the interfaith thing is wonderful, but I think we're all kind of a little bit past that at this point in a lot of ways. And I just hope that it keeps building instead of getting stuck at this, like, getting to know each other. We know, we get it. It's fine. We all love matcha lattes, okay? Like, and then what? And then come to the protest with me.
I'll just say one other quick thing. To show you how weak this interfaith approach is, a lot of these dialogue groups started to disintegrate after October 7th, you know, where they realized, oh my goodness, now we can't talk about the thing. So they just stopped and went off into their own camps. We want to counter that tendency, so.
Okay, folks, we have about 10 more minutes. I do appreciate you all for being here and for staying. We have about 10 more minutes for questions, so please, anyone else that would like to ask more questions? Not, I have some I don't mind asking, but really I'm looking to hear from you all.
Thanks so much. Assalamu alaikum. Obviously, what's happening in Gaza is far more painful than we can comprehend. Pain that we feel every day, in fact, every single minute, and a pain that we actually feel not just by ourselves, by our entire family members and our kids, and they actually talk more about it than we do. And what's happening is really horrific and very, very barbaric. Obviously, drastic times require drastic measures, and what's happening in Gaza is very, very horrible, and honestly, I don't feel they have a lot of time. Obviously, what's happening today is very great, and it's so good to see that our pain is being shared by our panelists and a lot of people in the society. But my question is, like, what are some drastic measures we can take at this point to really help them out? Contacting a representative, that's something we have done in the past. I've personally done it many times. At least they used to acknowledge it in the past, and they have become over time more numb, and they don't even respond to you. So I'm wondering, what else can we do? What else do we have in our toolbox that we can use at this time? It's staying obviously within the legal limits.
Well, I was looking for an opportunity to follow up on an earlier comment about the media. The letters to the editors in the newspaper are one of the best read sections of the newspaper. Write a letter to the editor. And if you don't know how, maybe you have a friend or somebody here at the mosque who can help you. And if you write a letter, let someone else at the mosque know. So when your letter appears in the paper, they can write a follow-up letter and say, I really appreciated such and such letter. I agree 100%, you know, and show that there is support out there. And you can generate this for a bit on your own. Now, the newspapers do have limits on how many letters to the editor they accept. But, you know, a couple of letters, I think, go a long way.
Do we have any questions from the sister side? Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, did we have more comments?
Just wanted to say, we need the numbers. We need to show locally. I mean, there are a lot of things that I wish. I mean, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I want to put myself on a boat and sail to Gaza. I honestly, and sometimes I think, and we all have, you know, our circumstances, especially if we have children, which means we have more responsibilities and obligations, and also it hurts on a much deeper level, right? Because we see the devastation on the children, and we see our own children, and going back and forth between that reality is so deeply painful. And I don't know how to describe it, but parents understand what I'm talking about. But I do just want to shout out a couple of things that are happening locally. Next Wednesday at 11 o'clock at the Federal Building, we are protesting Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Senators Chuck Schumer because they are horrible. They are horrible. They continue to vote time after time with Israel. They continue to accept AIPAC donations. Chuck Schumer has received almost $2 million from AIPAC, and Gillibrand is about 700 or 800,000, I think. They are some of the worst, and they were given the opportunity recently to vote against sending more weapons to Israel, and they actually voted against. The majority of Democrats in the Senate voted to block weaponry, and they voted with the Republicans so that they would continue to send these bombs. So anyway, next Wednesday at 11 a.m. at the Federal Building in Albany, there is a protest. There's also a campaign going on to encourage New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli to disinvest millions and millions of New York State common retirement funding from Israel bonds. So New York State Comptroller DiNapoli has been buying these Israel bonds, and right after October 7th, he bought extra, like millions of dollars of our retirement money, put it into Israel, and they can do whatever they want to do with those things. So what do you think they do with it, right? They buy bombs, they continue to enrich the occupation, and this is a country that has healthcare, that has education for its students. They don't need our money, but they keep getting it. So Break the Bonds is the name of that campaign. Please look that up. There's a petition to send to Tom DiNapoli that is super important. I know it sounds so lame. What can we do? A petition, right? But when that petition translates into maybe millions and millions of dollars not going there, I don't care anymore. If it's one fewer bullet that gets sent to Israel, I will kiss the senator who does. I don't care. If it's one child who won't have their arm amputated or who would get to eat for a week, I will anything. I know it sounds so lame to say a petition, but like, this is something that we can do, and if enough of us do it, it's a numbers game. If enough of us do that small thing, I think we will make a change. Other than putting ourselves on a boat and sailing to Gaza, which is, I don't know, if we're still in this position in a couple of months, maybe that's what we do. We all get our captain's license and figure that out.
You said, staying within the confines of the law. Laws are not morals. That's something we need to know. And, there was a time where it was illegal for black people to be free. There was a time where you'd get a bigger fine for beating your horse in public than killing a slave, right? It's illegal for a Palestinian to be tried in a regular court. It has to be a military court. It's illegal for a Palestinian to go to their olive trees. These are laws that are put in place by terrible people wearing suits and speaking, fluent English, and we're told that we need to stay within the lines. You've made very corrupt lines for us to abide by. The civil rights movement engaged in a lot of civil disobedience, which was against the law in some ways. That doesn't mean they were doing something wrong. That means the goalposts that were set were incorrect. So there are strategic discussions that need to happen, which exceeds the scope of this conversation of, what can actually be challenged and where can we push tactfully against what is defined as the law, so that those goalposts can shift.
If I can make one comment, and I know some of you, if you've heard me talk before, you've heard this story endless numbers of times, but the young guys here in the front, don't give up hope. When I was your age, my dad ran for town supervisor. He was a Catholic. And the Sunday before the election, the Presbyterian minister stood up before his congregation and said they're not allowed to vote for a Catholic. And so my dad called him up, being a good Irishman, and reamed him out over the phone. Well, times changed. We had something called Vatican II that changed relationships between Catholics and Protestants. So now I can sit next to this guy and not go to hell. When I was in high school, we started going to the roller skating parties at the Presbyterian Church. In college, my brother met a girl from the Presbyterian Church and married her. And my father also became the insurance agent for the Presbyterian Church. So you may like some of those examples, you may not like some of those examples, but don't give up hope. Things can change.
Thank you very much, Deacon. I do appreciate your comment. It looks like we have a final question. Okay, final question, then we'll wrap up.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Abdul Hamid. A couple years ago, I reverted back to Islam. My father was a Muslim. My mother was Christian. I seen what the Palestinian people are going through since Rachel Corrie, 2014, we seen the 51-day genocide. I think a couple important things to note here, and everybody said a lot of beautiful words, is that fascism often targets the intellectual community. And we see that in Nazi Germany, we see that in Gaza. They go after, journalists, doctors, the high art institutes. I think as an interfaith community, we should come together and maybe fund a scholarship for, a high art or high intellectual thing for Palestinian refugees. And I would like to thank you guys for all coming, and I appreciate that.
Just want to say it's a beautiful idea, and that's a great example of folks coming together for a charity to the Palestinian people that will work towards their liberation. Thank you for that suggestion.
So what we are experiencing in the United States and in Israel and also India and other places is a systematic attack on higher education. If you watch what has gone on at Columbia University and the number of students who have been suspended or have had job offers rescinded, faculty who have been fired, this is permeating the country right now. And it's part of a fascist technique to erase history, which basically, if you look at like the anti-DEI stuff, that's really code for we want to clean up the narrative to erase huge parts of our history. And so it becomes sort of this patriotic education. Same stuff's going on in India, and I am sure that within academic institutions and school systems in Israel, well, they're doing those kinds of filters as well. And then of course they just like decimated, bombed the whole higher educational system, in Gaza. And so we just really have to stand up for academic freedom and democracy. And what's probably the most disgusting of this, particularly for our Jewish friends in these universities, is that they have used these anti-Semites are weaponizing anti-Semitism to go after Jewish people, and they go after